When the Coast Guard officer notices movement on a secluded island, he investigates further and exclaims, "God, no." Lieutenant Dash Brown had encountered many high-pressure scenarios throughout his 10 years with the U.S. Coast Guard. However, this day was supposed to be routine. A straightforward patrol over the Pacific Ocean. Their route included a pass near Pikelot Island, an isolated coral island located about 180 miles northeast of the main Yap Islands. Renowned for its pristine beauty and remoteness, the island was seldom visited. As Dash adjusted his course slightly, the aircraft glided over the desolate stretch of land. He stared down at the pristine white sands, a thin line separating sea and sky. Then something caught his eye. A flicker of movement, almost imperceptible against the backdrop of trees. At first, Dash dismissed it, thinking it might just be a trick of the light or a stray bird. But as they hovered closer to the shore, Dash's gaze fell on the sand just beyond the tree line. There, carved into the pristine white beach in large, desperate letters, was a huge SOS scrawled in the sand. "Check it out!" Dash's voice grew urgent as he gestured to his co-pilot, Lieutenant Tom Doy. "An SOS signal. Someone's in serious trouble down there." Tom's eyes widened as he leaned forward to get a better look. "That's not just any random signal. They're stuck, or maybe facing something even worse." Dash adjusted the controls, slowing the chopper as they circled lower. "We'll radio this in and get rescue teams mobilized. But let's get eyes on the situation ourselves first. See if we can spot who we're dealing with." Tom nodded, already reaching for the radio. As the aircraft dipped lower, the movement that had caught Dash's eyes became more defined. Near the center of the island, he saw something unmistakable. People. "Guys, take a look at this," Dash called out to Tom as his pulse quickened, a knot forming in his stomach. "There shouldn't be anyone out here," he said. "Pikelot Island is supposed to be uninhabited." As they flew closer, Dash's heart dropped. 3 figures on the island were waving frantically, their emaciated forms clear even from the air. Their gestures were desperate, full of a raw urgency that made Dash's skin crawl. A boat was drawn up on the sand. "God, no!" he gasped. "They look like they've been out here for ages." The Coast Guard aircraft circled above Pikelot Island as Dash Brown and the crew took in the scene below. The 3 castaways, a woman and 2 men, were frantically waving, desperately trying to catch the attention of their unexpected visitors from above. Their thin frames and tattered clothing made it clear that these people had been stranded for a long time. Dash's initial shock was replaced by an overwhelming sense of urgency. The castaways needed help, and they needed it fast. As Dash lowered the aircraft for a closer look, the situation on the ground grew more unsettling. The island's flat, sandy surface offered little in the way of protection from the elements, and the dense palm fronds at the center suggested the only shelter they had was a makeshift hut pieced together with whatever debris had washed ashore. It was a place no human being was meant to stay for long. "We need to evacuate them from this island immediately," Dash declared, his voice firm with resolve. "Their condition appears critical." Yet, even as he spoke, a glance at the horizon revealed that their mission was about to face a new challenge. The previously clear skies over the ocean had turned ominously darker within the last 30 minutes. Dash spotted the undeniable signs of an approaching storm. Menacing clouds loomed, their dark masses expanding swiftly as they advanced, accompanied by strong gusts of wind that shook the aircraft. Tom, the co-pilot, noticed the change as well. "Dash, we've got trouble coming in from the southwest," he said, checking the weather radar. "There's a fast-moving storm front. Looks like it could be severe." Dash's jaw clenched. "How much time do we have?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Tom glanced at the instruments, tweaking the radar's settings. "We've got about 30 minutes before it reaches us. If we stay any longer, we'll be right in its path." His face darkened. "It's coming in quicker than we thought." Dash gripped the controls tightly, his thoughts racing. There was no question that the castaways needed urgent help, but conducting a rescue under worsening weather conditions would be dangerous, both for the crew and the stranded people below. The strong winds already pushing against the aircraft would make lowering a winch difficult, if not impossible. And with the approaching storm, the waves around the island were swelling, making a water landing out of the question. The helicopter support they would need for a safe rescue couldn't be dispatched into such conditions either. "Drop a radio and emergency supplies," Dash ordered. "We need to get them stabilized until we can come back." The crew quickly prepared a package with food, water, medical supplies, and a two-way radio, bundling it securely to withstand the drop. Dash circled the aircraft, bringing it to a low hover above a flat section of the island, and the crew released the bundle. It hit the sand a short distance from the castaways who rushed forward to collect it. As the three figures ripped open the package, a voice crackled over the radio. "Can you hear us?" Dash said into his microphone, anxiety coursing through him. The reply came faint and trembling. "We hear you. Thank you. Please help us." "We're the U.S. Coast Guard," Dash said, keeping his voice steady despite the urgency pressing on his chest. "We're here to help, but we've got bad weather rolling in. We have to return to base, but we'll be back for you as soon as the storm passes. We've dropped emergency supplies to get you through the night: food, water, and a medical kit." The silence that followed was punctuated by static. Then the same voice came back, fraught with desperation. "No, don't leave us, please. We've been stranded for 33 days, surviving on whatever we can catch: rats, conches, and drinking rainwater," the plea read. "But Rita's blood sugar's critically low. We need help, please." Dash felt a wave of guilt tighten in his chest as he read the desperate words. "We don't have a choice," he said, his voice heavy with strain. "The storm is almost upon us, and attempting a rescue now would be too dangerous. We'll return for you." The storm's presence became increasingly undeniable. Powerful gusts of wind intensified, causing the aircraft to jolt, and Dash watched the castaways struggle to stay upright as the first raindrops hit the sand. The temperature seemed to plummet instantly, the air now thick and electric with the storm's ominous arrival. "Dash, we have to go," Tom said, his tone urgent. "Visibility is about to drop, and we won't be able to navigate safely if we don't get ahead of this." Dash hesitated for a heartbeat, his eyes fixed on the figures below, who clutched the supplies as if they were a lifeline. Then, reluctantly, he guided the aircraft away from the island. He glanced back, seeing the dark clouds roll in like a sweeping curtain, obscuring the tiny dot of land. The downpour came moments later, heavy and punishing, obscuring even the ocean below. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much." The sense of helplessness gnawed at him. Leaving the castaways behind felt wrong, but the storm left them no choice. Any attempt to lower a rescue winch in those conditions would have been reckless. With high winds whipping the cable unpredictably and making it impossible to secure someone safely, a hoisting operation would have risked throwing one of the castaways, or even a crew member, into the ocean or against the side of the aircraft. As they flew back to Andersen Air Force Base in Guam, some 500 miles away, Dash couldn't help but replay the scene over and over in his mind. The desperate figures on the ground, their cries for help barely audible through the static. It wasn't just the technical obstacles of the storm that weighed on him, it was the human side of it. The knowledge that 3 people were fighting for their lives, and he had just flown away. The only solace Dash found was in knowing that they had left the castaways with enough supplies to get through the night. Additional patrols and support helicopters were already being organized for the next day. 3 hours later, as the aircraft touched down at base, rain began to lash against the windows of the airfield. Dash climbed out of the cockpit, feeling the sting of the cold wind as it whipped against his face. He knew that in the hours to come, he would lie awake, unable to shake the feeling that somewhere out there, on that desolate island, 3 lives hung in the balance, enduring the storm alone. Dash couldn't shake the haunting image of the gaunt figures waving for help, and he wondered how they had survived for so long in such a hostile environment. The radio transmission had hinted at the dire conditions: dehydration, starvation, and exposure to the elements. He imagined their struggle each day to find enough sustenance to keep going. He debriefed the crew, who listened intently as he described the castaways' condition. Tom shook his head. It's incredible they've survived this long at all. The heat, the lack of fresh water, it would have broken most people. The Coast Guard organized helicopters to surveil the island overnight, ready to drop extra supplies if needed, while planning a full-scale rescue for the next day. The objective was straightforward: evacuate the stranded individuals from the island as quickly as possible. Dash spent a restless night in his bunk, his thoughts consumed by the haunting images of the castaways. He reflected on their incredible resilience, surviving for so long through sheer determination. They must have faced overwhelming fear each time the horizon grew ominous, each night a cruel reminder that help might never arrive. In the middle of the night, Dash woke from a fitful sleep and walked outside to the airfield, where a faint wind stirred the trees. He watched as a helicopter returned from a supply run, the pilot stepping down from the aircraft with a weary expression. "They're hanging in there," the pilot reported, "but just barely. We need to get them out first thing tomorrow." Dash felt a surge of urgency, as if time were slipping away with each passing hour. The island's rugged landscape, coupled with the castaways' weak condition, meant that a successful rescue would be challenging. Every detail had to go right. The following morning, the weather had cleared enough for Dash and the crew to launch the rescue operation. The helicopter flew low over the choppy sea, the wind pressing against the aircraft as it approached Pikelot Island. Dash's hands gripped the controls tightly, his nerves taut as he prepared for the dangerous task ahead. The helicopter hovered above the island, the castaways looking even frailer in the stark light of day. Their skin was pale, their eyes sunken, and the clothes on their backs hung like rags. Dash's heart tightened as he saw the woman stumble forward, her movements sluggish and unsteady. They lowered the winch, sending down a harness to lift each person to safety. The first man, his hands trembling from exhaustion, clung to the harness as he was hoisted up. As the helicopter crew pulled him inside, his breathing was shallow, his limbs shaking with relief and fatigue. Next came the woman. Dash's pulse quickened as she struggled to fit herself into the harness. The crew had to lower the winch more carefully for her, as her movements were sluggish and uncoordinated. As she was hoisted into the air, she seemed almost weightless, a fragile figure caught between life and death. When she reached the helicopter, the medics immediately checked her vitals and administered emergency treatment. The last man was brought up with difficulty, his body swaying with the motion of the winch. When he finally collapsed onto the helicopter floor, his eyes were red and glassy, but a faint smile broke through as he whispered, "Thank you." The helicopter sped toward the coast, carrying its precious cargo. Dash stayed close to the castaways, monitoring their condition as the medics worked to stabilize them. The woman was in the worst shape, her breathing still shallow and her pulse weak. The medics administered glucose to raise her blood sugar, all the while keeping a close watch on her vitals. The other two men lay on stretchers, sipping water slowly as they regained some of their strength. One of the men, his voice raspy and hoarse, tried to explain their ordeal. "We got caught in a storm and lost a lot of fuel weathering it. We drifted. We thought we were going to die." Dash nodded, his face set with a determined expression. "You're safe now. We'll get you to a hospital," he reassured them. As the helicopter approached the mainland, the sight of the coast brought Dash a wave of relief. The castaways' harrowing ordeal was almost over, and soon they would receive the medical attention they so desperately needed. When the helicopter landed at the medical facility, a team of doctors and nurses rushed to meet them. Dash assisted in transferring the castaways to stretchers, his gaze lingering on the woman. Though barely conscious, the doctors confirmed she was in stable condition. "It's nothing short of a miracle that they survived," one of the doctors remarked, shaking his head in awe. In the days that followed, the castaways began their slow recovery in the hospital. Dash visited them, hoping to hear more about their ordeal. The details were sparse, bits and pieces of a harrowing story that still left many questions unanswered. They described how they had set sail from Pulet to Pulap atolls aboard their 23ft skiff, but ran out of fuel and drifted off course. Eventually, they found refuge on tiny, uninhabited Pikelot Island, nearly 125 miles away from their point of departure. For weeks, they had survived by building a makeshift shelter and catching whatever they could find for food. Each day had been a battle to hold on, and there were times when they didn't think they would make it. The woman's condition had worsened, leaving the men to care for her as best they could. As Dash listened, he felt a deep admiration for their resilience. Their survival was a testament to human endurance, a refusal to give up even when faced with seemingly insurmountable odds. Despite everything, they had clung to hope, and it had made all the difference. The U.S. Border Patrol continued to investigate the circumstances surrounding the castaways' journey, but to Dash, the specifics didn't matter. He had been there to save fellow humans in need, and that was enough. Did you enjoy this story? How long could you survive on a deserted island? Let us know in the comments below. If you liked the story, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Hope truly has the power to save us. Thank you so much for listening. See you in the next video. Have a great day.